Hey, Jon Francois here from the Delicious Recap Family Matters podcast. I mean, you probably would have been overwhelmed if we made you sit through like 2+ hours in one file of what we thought about the Quilt episode. So we decided to just split it into two parts. You listened to part 1, and now here is part 2. And then out of nowhere and out of sight, after Harriet again asks how much, Rachel is playing those fucking awful screechy saxophone notes that you seem to enjoy, Andrew. But at the same time, it kind of made me laugh because it was a surprise. I didn't expect it.
It was interesting. This saxophone is beautiful, but Rachel just can't play. And the notes, I'm just like, okay, we haven't had change since the last scene, so we need to do better, Rachel.
And Rachel is the art master of the broken record, if I worded that correctly. So remember when she kept repeating the whole baby Richie forcing to say his first word over and over again? She's doing the same thing with the saxophone. Rachel just loves beating a horse to death.
She does. She enjoys it. I feel like Rachel finds comfort in repetitivity, and she's like, I'm just going to do it again until I get it right.
And she never gets it right. Laura responds to Rachel's bad sax and says that is not helping either. Harriet says, Laura, in that stern motherly way that tells you she wants an answer now. And Laura just comes out with it and admits that she's only made $3.25. Harriet astonishingly asks if that's all that was really made. Laura defensively tells her mom that there's not much of a market for a 200-watt bowling ball. Were you as confused as I was about this 200-watt bowling ball? So first of all, I was thinking like the wording of it, 200-watt bowling ball. I thought watts was only associated with electricity. What do watts have to do with bowling balls? And then, like, you see the camera cut into an actual bowling ball with, like, a light bulb lamp thing attached to it. Now, is that something that people have literally done, or is that just a self-contained joke within the show that is random? I don't know.
I have seen a bowling ball lamp. They are real. They exist. And when she said 200-watt bowling ball, before they showed the lamp, I was like, is that what they do in bowling? Like, is that how you know what size ball you have? And like, I went on a whole thing before I even saw the lamp. And then I saw the lamp and I'm like, oh, this kind of makes sense. But it gives me one of those like early like 70s, 80s, like they turned specific weird things into light fixtures.
Interesting. Because for a moment there, I was thinking like, maybe if you put the lamp on the bowling ball, like, you know, say you're in a bowling alley and the electricity went out. So that light is going to help you as you roll the ball into the pins. Now, of course, that might cause some kind of electrocution explosion from the light on the bowling ball, but that's what I was thinking. And then I saw this Reddit thread where someone stacked like 10 bowling balls, and then on the very top of that 10 bowling ball stack was a lamp. So there seems to be some kind of relationship between lamps and bowling balls that I'm missing here.
I'm missing it too. Huh. Okay, now I've got to know. What is the correlation? Why are there so many light fixtures with bowling balls?
Yeah, I tried to look into it, but at the same time, I was like doing this recap noting for like 4 hours. So you can understand that my patience was wearing very thin.
John, were you just like, F this bowling ball, get out of here?
Yeah, pretty much. So Harriet tells Laura to not worry because what she doesn't sell can just be donated to Goodwill. This was a conversation I had with my wife, Tony. So do you know for a fact if Goodwill is better to donate to than the Salvation Army?
So this is going to take me back a little bit. In anthropology in college, we watched something about Goodwill and getting their clothes and how they actually resell some of the stuff to other countries as opposed to just donating it all. You can all like buy it yourself secondhand. So I don't know fully, but from watching that documentary, I never shopped at Goodwill again, but I still go to the Salvation Army.
Interesting, because Tony says bad things about the Salvation Army. She says Goodwill is better because apparently something associated with like the religious background of the Salvation Army, that there was some sketchy things happening. So interesting.
That would make sense because the Salvation Army had missionaries.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just getting a whole general vibe of thrift stores just not being great places to shop or donate stuff to anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go to the independent thrift stores, but you're going to pay an arm and a leg for something at like the Salvation Army you'd get for like $1 or two.
Laura agrees with the backup plan on the condition that she gets the tax write-off, which I feel like seems like a pain in the butt because like to get a tax write-off for donations, don't you have to like fill out a form or keep track of a bunch of receipts? How does that process work?
You got to get your receipts. You got forms. Sometimes you need letters, all that stuff. I hate taxes so much that I only pay somebody from H&R Block to just take all of it.
And, being an Instacart driver, I'm an Instacart shopper on the side, much like how you are a DoorDash driver. I'm sure, like DoorDash gives you like the whole gas mileage spiel where it's like, oh, yeah, you could probably like write this off on your taxes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they do. But even when I went and filed my taxes this year, I'm like, I don't have any of those receipts. I don't have any of that information. So I was just like, forget it. I'm just going to chalk it up as a loss this year.
Yeah, it's like a very old school Carl Winslow. You got to track every receipt from the past year and have that old school looking calculator. It's just too much work. Let's just try to be smart about how far we're driving for orders and then just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's all I want. I wish DoorDash, if anybody who works for DoorDash is listening, find a way to make it easier so we can track our gas and mileage. Like send us something that you track. I'll be so fine with that.
As Harriet exits toward the kitchen, she is physically and amusingly stunned by Eddie suddenly flashing his camera as he's coming from the kitchen. Eddie tells his mom that picture will be a good one. And Harriet appropriately cried out, like, don't do that! Because I obviously don't do that because like the fucking Eddie could have almost blinded her with that big flash. With that old school camera flash, it's no joke, Andrew.
It isn't, but Eddie was my spirit person in this moment because I do that with my camera all the time. Even like, you remember the old wind-up cameras you'd buy at the store? I would take them to school and literally just randomly flash people and take a picture close up to their face. And I just love doing that. I still do it to this day with my cell phone.
Now, did you just do that because of like because of the genuine candidness of it? Or did you do that because you just like to fuck with people and blind them in the eyes?
I like it for the candidness. And then blinding people was kind of fun at the same time because they'd be like, oh my gosh. And then you get like these really good poses in the pictures.
I bet. But man, Harriet was really affected by the flash because all of a sudden she's just flailing her arms around afterward and so blinded that she's just knocking a light over as she tries to find her way into the kitchen. Clumsy Harriet. That's a new thing that I haven't seen before.
We have not seen Harriet do physical humor. This is the first.
So we'll see if we see more of that in her almost 9 seasons on the show. Because as we know, there was a new Harriet, 5 episodes before Family Matters ended?
Yeah. We got this brand new Harriet where you're like, ooh, this is Harriet Light.
Yeah. More on that in the year 2055 when we finally get to the last season. So let's talk about Eddie's diarrhea brown, maybe leather jacket here and then underneath, I think he had like a white cartoony Christmas tree sweater inside. What the fuck was that?
It was interesting. They just threw something on Eddie in this scene because none of his clothes made sense.
Laura cries. I mean, if it is Christmas, the episode came out on December 8th. So maybe that was the closest they came to actually acknowledging the holiday season. Because I don't think we get the holiday episode at all in season 1.
No, there's not a holiday episode.
Laura cries out to Eddie in astonished disappointment and tells him he's supposed to be helping with the customers. What customers, Laura? I ask myself. And then as it just so happens, Eddie literally asked the same question. So me and dumb oblivious Eddie were on the same track of mind, Andrew.
But you see the things that are out there and you're like, I've got to call this out.
And Eddie says he's going outside to stand under a tree because maybe he'll get lucky and get a picture of some lightning. So we could have been very close to Eddie being killed off the show this early through electrocution.
It could have happened. Also, we could have gotten some more development out of this camera thing. This could have been a hobby for Eddie in other episodes.
Yeah, especially as he gets smarter compared to Waldo. I think distinguished photographer Eddie, who's also good looking. Come on now. I mean, how many photographers have you wanted to sleep with?
A few. Yeah, because they're fine.
Let me see into your soul through the picture. And then, you say, oh, you can see through my pants. How about that?
I mean, we've got the original one, Jack, when what's her name said, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls. So they knew what they were doing.
As Eddie heads toward the living room door, Judy enters from said door, and Eddie quickly tells her to smile so he can take a picture. Judy appropriately is surprised, but I think I saw it in the subtitles, but I didn't actually hear it. So I assume that she said it because the subtitles said it too. Didn't she give an oh goodness, like she gave a rather eloquent oh goodness in response to Eddie's flashing?
She does. She does back and she says, oh, goodness. But it's like so old woman. I think they just edited it out but left it in the subtitles.
Yeah, I was like, damn, Judi Dench, appropriately, who's also an old woman. We see Judi coming in with a raincoat that literally is a mixture of the colors of Barney, Baby Bop, and BJ. I don't know if you had the same thought. It was like, whoa, Barney the dinosaur on Judi.
Oh, yeah. She was full on Crayola box Barney.
And the poor girl literally sporting a front and back poster that says garage sale, and the black marker print has been somewhat washed out from the rain. And I just wanted to like point my finger at Laura, like, why in the heck would you let this poor fucking child stand out in the rain by herself like that? Shame on you.
Right. Poor Judi. They just abuse her.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, Judi, you can have more to do on the show, but as a sort of compromise, you have to stand out in the fucking rain by yourself.
Like, just get out there, girl. And then nobody like has any warm clothes for her. She doesn't get any warm cocoa, nothing.
Oh my God. No wonder why they let her go. They just didn't care about her.
Mm-hmm.
Judi fed up and makes it clear that this is it. And she quits as she takes the sign off of her and lets it drop to the ground. I don't blame you, Judi. I'd quit too if I was treated the way you were. Laura asked Judi like how people are going to find the house if she's not waving the flashlight. And I felt like didn't that flashlight look like one of those air traffic controller things that they wave airplanes with?
It did. Immediately as I saw it, I'm like, where was she using the sign at on a runway?
And again, Laura, I'm just saying to this woman as I'm watching the episode, bitch, Laura, you go out there with that sign and see how it feels in the rain.
Right, Laura, get your butt out there. You're nice and warm. You'll be fine.
I'm just being very protective of Judi ever since we've been giving her flowers. Don't mind me, Andrew.
Okay.
Judi says she's wet, cold, cranky. Laura interjects with a but then, remember, Judi just goes on top of her. She's on fucking fire. She quickly interrupts Laura's interruption with a don't mess with me. And then she just exits up the stairs as the audience clearly loves the moment with little smatterings of applause heard. I mean, the exit was a little clunky, but I just thought, what a great moment for Jamie. Is that the key moment that you were referencing earlier? Or
yes, that is the one moment I screamed. I was laughing so hard. I had to stop because I was blacked out from laughing because I felt Judi in that moment of just don't mess with me. I am wet right now, tired and hungry. You better leave me alone.
We all felt Judi in that moment. We all are Judi right now.
Yes, we all are Judi. We're Judi deep down inside, and we just have to recognize that.
We're the underdog that doesn't get treated with respect the way we deserve to be treated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Laura rolls her eyes bummingly, and I don't have sympathy for her at all because, this is what you get when you take advantage of your siblings. And then we cut to the living room door where we suddenly see what I think is a too perfect looking version of a white woman. Like I said at the beginning of this, she's got the perfectly curly, short blonde hair with that stereotypical beige-ish detective overcoat. She's perfectly thin. She's got this gray, blue, flowery umbrella. Were you in line with me, Andrew, that like this is a concerningly picture perfect white woman, or were you just casually looking at her like she was just anybody else?
I literally wrote in my notes, who is this white woman walking into these black people's house? Like she just opened the door, no hesitation. And I'm just like, how? How did this woman know this was the house to go to? Why is she here looking so pristinely perfect? She was not wet. She was not wet. So where did this woman come from and how did this woman get in here? I had a full color purple moment and just looked like, Harpo, who's this woman? That's what I said to myself. I'm like, what is going on here?
I mean, I'm guessing that umbrella was big enough to just cover her and keep her away from the wetness overall. But I think we're describing white privilege here, Andrew. She's not wet. She unsolicitedly just comes in without knocking, I think. Well, even though it's a garage sale, but still, whatever. She's just like, you know what? I'm Caucasian. I own this bitch.
Yeah, that's what she did. I even if I knew a garage sale was happening, I would have at least rung the doorbell, not just walked right in.
The woman nonetheless seems very kind and asks Laura if she can have a look around. Laura smiles like she's sensing some surprise potential here and invites the lady to go ahead and look. White lady looks around and compliments Laura on the nice things. Now, don't mind me, Andrew, because we don't get her name until like the last scene. I'm going to call her White Lady because, I mean, did you get her name until the last scene or before the last scene?
As soon as they said her name in the last scene, I'm like, when did we find out her name?
Laura disbelievingly asks, I do? but when she notices the lady's slightly confused look, Laura immediately acts like she thinks she should act and pleasantly says thank you. Lady holds up a tablecloth and remarks on how lovely it is, even though it's your standard, I think it's your standard bland old lady-like tablecloth.
It totally is. It looks like was it a doily? Is that what it's called?
That is a great word. I think it's a doily. Yep, it is totally a doily. And a doily is an ugly word just like that ugly tablecloth. It perfectly fits the ugliness of that tablecloth.
Yeah, if I see that tablecloth on somebody's table, I'm not eating their food. It's telling me that this is a very bland house.
Yeah, it tells me that you're going to serve me cold soup and crackers. That's what it tells me.
Oh, that sounds so nasty.
Right? Here's some cold soup and crackers. How about a Werther's Original? Ew.
Oh, God, John, that's like a Fear Factor meal.
And here's like a really uncool version of socks and flip-flops, Grandma. That was my Before hip-hop culture like made socks and flip-flops really cool, you know the way grandmas were doing it. It was awful. Like they had it was awful. I don't even want to describe it because it just makes me cringe. Rest in peace, Grandma.
I remember. Ugh.
Laura says that belongs to her grandmother and thinks for a moment on how she can make up a great story to get this lady to buy. Laura then claims that her grandmother needs money for an operation. A lady seems to pleasantly buy this made-up story and tells Laura that she'll take it while handing her the tablecloth. Laura tries to sweeten the deal further by telling the lady that there's matching napkins for $5 extra and adds that her grandmother also needs a root canal. So one, I just was cringing at the image of napkins that look and maybe feel exactly like that tablecloth. Doily napkins?
Oh, they won't be absorbent at all.
Ugh. And you tell me, since you're in the dentistry field, it has to be painful for an old person to get a root canal, right? More painful than a younger person, maybe?
When you're older, it hurts a whole lot more than a younger person.
So when I'm 65 and need a root canal, I will say, nope, I'll just let my teeth rot and I will get false teeth. Thank you.
John, just get the false teeth. Don't let them rot.
I guess. I don't know. Don't make me think about it. The lady says, I will see, as she clearly wasn't expecting that statement from Laura, and then she continues to look around. Suddenly, this white lady is fucking marveled by the plastic wrapped quilt, or the condomed quilt, as we like to call it, that we know Mama Winslow does not want to be sold. And the audience is groaning because they know, oh shit, this cannot be good. White privilege coming on here. What the fuck?
Very true. As soon as she saw that quilt, I was like, damn it, we're about to get one of these moments where I'm going to have to just look at my screen and say, this damn privilege.
This damn perfect ass looking Karen. What the fuck? White lady seems to have no manners and just takes this quilt out of this plastic wrapping as she asks how much it is. Laura does the right thing at first and plainly says it's not for sale. And just like when we said earlier about how Mama Winslow should have taken the quilt out of the box and put it away in a closet somewhere, when Mama Winslow forgot to do that, maybe Laura should have thought to put the quilt away somewhere upstairs so that it wouldn't be in sight. But here we are. We got to have our conflict for this episode to make it interesting.
Very true. We have to, but I am with you. Laura, you had the chance to just put the quilt in a different box. That's all you had to do.
And speaking of which, White Lady understandably says that the quilt was with the other things, and she offers to give Laura a fair price for it. Laura grabs the quilt from White Lady and says it was a mistake for the quilt to be out here because it's her grandmother's, and she does not want it sold. Laura offers the lady a blanket instead that has only had one owner and has only been used for a couple of picnics, which doesn't really sound that appealing to me. You know, you're talking about a used blanket that has been wrinkled by some butts.
It's a butt ground pillow, a blanket. I don't want it.
A butt ground pillow? Is that what you said?
I call it a butt ground pillow because I guess it could give you a little cushion on the ground, but it's been on your ground and butts. Like, who wants that?
And also, when you said butt ground, all of a sudden I just imagine like butt skin being grounded to make coffee. Like,
oh my God. Oh, gross.
This is what happens when you didn't get any sleep last night, Andrew. You just have images of butt skin grounded coffee.
Ooh, that's going to be some tangy coffee. Oh my God.
Lady says no thanks and tells Laura that if her grandmother is willing to part with what she deems to be a beautiful tablecloth, she doesn't know why Mama Winslow would not want to sell the quilt if the price was right. So as White Lady has taken the quilt back from Laura to caress it, she asks how much it is worth. Laura says she's not really sure, and then the lady quickly offers $200 for it. And then the audience audibly is shocked by that dollar amount. Laura, as you know, she's heaving, hyperventilating, like, what? Because, imagining yourself as an 11 or 12-year-old, someone offers you $200, you feel like you had $2 million.
Oh, yeah. If I hear 100 as a 12-year-old, you might as well just say, I'm just the richest person in the world.
Pretty much. I mean, and I don't have to help my parents out with the fucking mortgage and all the other bills that come with it. Hello, come on now.
Right.
Let me retire to the old lady slumber party house.
There you go. You don't even know what taxes are at that age. You know that you just have money.
All right, lady is concerned and pats Laura on the back while asking if she's all right. Laura makes up the excuse of having asthma. White lady tells Laura she bet her grandmother would be very proud of her if Laura got a good price for this quilt. Laura says she's sorry, she really can't. The lady still doesn't know when to give up and offers $250. Laura again says she can't. Lady ups the offer to $300, and Laura immediately asks the lady if she would like the quilt gift wrapped. Now, this has the audience laughing at how quickly Laura changes her mind. But, I can feel an awkward, dramatic moment coming. And I think that moment is going to be coming in our next scene, Andrew.
It is. It's the coerciveness of all of it. This woman should be ashamed of herself.
You talking about white lady or Laura?
The white lady. Like, she should be ashamed of herself. This little girl has told you, I can't sell this quit. And you just keep going until you break her down. I don't like her. Throw her out. And
I also think there's an argument to be made. Should we let minors without parental supervision lead garage sales? Like, do you think they have? Like, okay, Laura is fairly smart at school, but at the end of the day, like, she's underage. She's not legally able to work. She doesn't know about financial matters and how to effectively sell as much as her parents. Do you think it was a good idea to leave her unsupervised with this garage sale?
No, I don't think it was a good idea at all. I mean, if my child is selling lemonade for $1 on the corner, I will be right there, because as soon as one of these adults try to say, oh, well, I'll give you this much, it's $1. And that's what this says, or she can't sell it to you. Get out.
Yeah, I'll give you $3,000 for that lemonade stand. Oh, I'll maybe how about 10 cents for the lemonade instead of 25? Like, yeah, adults, when they sense they can take advantage of the kids, they can be very manipulative.
Mm-hmm. And this woman, she was one of them. This was colonizer energy at its heart.
Oh, God. And what a beautiful colonizer, by the way. I'm sorry. Look, I know colonizing, very bad for the Black people, but wow. If I had known that our colonizers were going to be this beautifully perfect, I would have just said, hey, Massa, hello. I'm kidding. She's not my type. I'm just kidding. I love us Black people. I love our freedom. I'm kidding. I just want to clarify that me as a Black person, I love my freedom. Let's just put that out there.
Yes, we love our freedom. And this woman should have been ashamed of herself. You took advantage of a child, a young Black child.
Scene 3, night exterior shot of Winslow house, cut to kitchen where Carl and Harriet are around a bunch of what I think are just fruits at the countertop. Carl must be bummed because that's a lot of healthy stuff on the countertop there. Like, what the? Even I'm bummed. I'm like, where's the cookies and ice cream and donuts?
Yeah, we didn't have a bland sandwich. We didn't have ice cream, donuts. We didn't have coffee up there. It was very healthy in that kitchen.
Yeah, I hated it. So Mama Winslow is wearing her supposedly casual grandmother nightgown dress, which I think we saw in the pilot episode.
Yes, she wore that in the pilot episode.
And she's talking on the phone. Mama is asking someone named Shirley on the other line if she still hasn't found something, because Shirley was wearing them last night at the slumber party. So this is all unidentified to lead up to our joke. And without hearing Shirley's side of the story on the other end, Mama Winslow tells her that she should carry an extra pair. So automatically in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, underwear? Is Shirley missing underwear? What were you thinking? Were you thinking underwear?
I thought granny panties. I did think it.
Mama Winslow tells Shirley good luck and ends the call with a goodbye. As she hangs up, Harriet asks if Shirley lost her glasses. Totally was not thinking of that. Mama Winslow looks into the distance confusingly and I think concerningly as well and says, no, her teeth. I was not expecting that. I found that very amusing.
I just want to know, what happened to these teeth? What were y'all doing?
Lesson to be learned. False teeth is better than getting a root canal. That's what we've learned. So keep your false teeth on you at all costs, Shirley. I'm courting controversy today, Andrew. First, I'm saying that us Black people do not deserve our freedom if we have beautiful white colonizers. And then I'm also saying that false teeth is better than a root canal.
You know, you're spitting some facts out here, John, that people need to hear and make their decisions on.
Oh boy, I don't want anybody to come after me right now. I'll have dentists and a modern day Black Panther party coming after me right now.
That could be a good movie plot. Ooh.
The modern day Black Panther dentist.
I can see that. That'd be really good, actually.
I would love to see it too. As Mama Winslow walks over to the kitchen table in continued disbelief, Carl amusingly says it sounds like it was a wild slumber party. Mama Winslow agrees it was. Camera pans to the right to reveal Eddie and Judy awkwardly standing by the other end of the table. And so again, I felt like weren't we getting the awkward camera pan that we got in the beginning? What the fuck is up with this cameraman who seems to forget that, oh yeah, here are these two characters off to the right. Maybe you should do a wider shot and get them too.
I don't know, but I noticed that too, where I'm like, oh, they're just here. The camera was not focused on them at all.
And also, is it me? Is it my eyes? Is it the camera lighting? I felt like they were both wearing oddly bright pink shirts.
They were. I think Eddie's is like this, like, what would you call it? Like brick red, like a faded brick red. And then Judy's was that like Pepto-Bismol pink, as the same as Carl's chair.
But why? I felt like these were like kids performing on stage for a show or something. It was weird.
I don't know. They keep putting these weird colors on these children, and I don't get it.
And then I was like, I thought I saw like bear heads on Eddie's shirt. Like, did you see all the patterns, all the characters, all the shit that was on his shirt?
Yeah, I still don't understand it. It's such a jarring shirt. It's not cute.
Mama Winslow says her and the girlfriends were up till about 9:45 at their slumber party, which, you know, of course, the audience laughs at. But hey, the fact of the matter is you get older and staying up can still mean going to bed early. You know, I think you and I, Andrew, being in our 30s, I mean, heck, I have a wife who is not even in her 30s yet, but, you know, you have that energy where usually by 9 o'clock, you're like, all right, I'm good. I'm good.
Yes. If you ask me to do something and it's 9:45, I'm going to look at you like you're crazy. I'm getting in bed. I don't know what you're going to do.
Rachel comes down the stairs with a long, bright blue dress, and she's again hammering away awfully at that saxophone. Carl cries out Rachel's name a few times, like, Rachel, 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 to get her to stop. And once she does, Carl asks her if she's going to be doing this a lot. Rachel says, oh, yeah. And it's all coming back to her because, here we go, they used to call her Hot Lips. And before Harriet said her lovely line, I was thinking, you sure that was because of the saxophone and not because of the many men you got to try out in this show? But Harriet, did you think of that moment before Harriet's line too?
I did. I totally did.
But of course, Harriet makes it even better. She just makes me fucking laugh out loud with this line. Rachel, that was before you got the saxophone.
Everybody has a Hot Lips friend. So Harriet delivered that perfectly.
But did you notice the audience response to that? I found it to be weird because I felt like it was a mixture of laughs and then some in the audience going, oh, like Harriet was slut shaming Rachel.
Yeah. Some people reacted like, how dare you call her a slut? It's like Harriet didn't say that. She just said she had hot lips before the saxophone.
And I totally believe it. Like I told you in a previous episode, Thelma Hopkins, very attractive woman. I totally believe that she would be a hot kisser.
Mm-hmm. She probably is a pro. I can see that.
But Rachel owns her non-saxophone hot lips reputation and privately says, oh, yeah. And enter Laura from the swinging door to report that Goodwill just took all the junk that didn't sell. And of course, she had to tip them $5 to take the bowling ball lamp. Judy asks Laura how much money did they make. Laura walks over to the table and privately says 350 big ones. And then you got dumb Eddie coming in, $350,000.
I love that Eddie thought $350,000 because I'm like, how did he come up with this number? And he saw everything they were selling.
But honestly, based on how White Lady was pricing that quilt later on, you would have, I wouldn't be surprised if she sold it for that much too.
Yes. I have a lot to say about that moment.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. That white privilege markup, if you know what I'm saying.
Terrible. They should be ashamed.
Also at this moment, I'm looking more into Eddie's shirt and I'm seeing just more shit that just confuses the fuck out of me. So tell me if you see this. So I'm looking at like a bunch of X's, what looks like faces drawn on diapers, someone in a cowboy hat that's being covered by Judy's head as she's standing in front of Eddie. What the fuck is this shirt?
I have no idea. The only thing, and the reason why I think it's this, because I saw the cowboy image, was that it was a Clint Eastwood shirt from Dirty Harry. But I'm like, is that the same time? I don't think that movie was recent enough at that period for Eddie to have seen it to be a fan to get a t-shirt of it.
So you're saying what was like Clint Eastwood himself in Dirty Harry wearing that shirt, or was someone else wearing that shirt?
I feel like it was a t-shirt of the movie. Like somebody like made a t-shirt to represent the movie Dirty Harry. And I was like, I don't think that's it. But I just couldn't put my finger on it.
Interesting. And again, height-wise, oh my God, the difference between Eddie and Judy. Darius is getting fucking tall.
He is. From the first scene with the box, it's like, damn, how did he get this tall? He's towering over Judy.
And I think he has, like me, because I had my growth spurt at like 6th grade, and then I stopped, and then everybody that used to be shorter than me just became taller than me later on. I think once Eddie carries on throughout the show, I think he maintains a certain height.
I think so too. Now, I think they also have repositioned the camera in the later seasons so he doesn't look as tall compared to everybody else.
Yeah, possibly. Laura calls Eddie a Nimrod and clarifies that they made $350. Nimrod. I was like, wow, that's a very 90s sounding word. I have not heard in quite some time. I had to look it up, and it has 2 different definitions according to Google. So it could either mean a foolish or inept person or a skillful hunter. So you could either be a smart Nimrod or a dumb Nimrod.
Yeah, I feel like I heard Nimrod use in ancient Greece stuff a lot.
I could see that. Also, I feel like, wasn't that an Invader Zim character? Remember the show Invader Zim on Nickelodeon?
Oh, I love Invader Zim. It has a spot in my heart. And I feel like there was a character named Nimrod on Invader Zim.
Yeah, we got to look into that sometime. That is interesting. Laura explains that she sold some of Mama Winslow's napkins and a few other things. And I don't know about you. I was getting a little nervous because I was like, oh shit, this quilt moment is going to come. This
is the moment I did not want to come. I'm like, oh my God, we're about to get crushed.
Oh my God, Will's biological dad is going to leave him again. Oh. Oh, all right. So Mama Winslow genuinely tells Laura that's wonderful. Laura turns to Rachel, Harriet, and Carl with a frown and says, no one else's junk moved. Harriet asks Laura if she really sold $350 worth of napkins. And here it comes. I saw it in the subtitles. Like I was pausing, taking notes. And as I was leaving the episode pause, taking notes, the subtitles came ahead of me. So here we go. Laura says what really put her over the top was the $300 she got for Grandma's old quilt. Mama Winslow, quickly in shock, says, what? Say that again? And then I hear a little audience groaning as Carl asks Laura disbelievingly that she really didn't sell her grandmother's quilt, did she? Laura tries to defend herself by telling Mama Winslow that she know what she was told, but enough money was made to buy a VCR and a quilt. And like Mama Winslow said, out with the old and in with the new. And I had a side note here. Like, did the Winslow family really survive without a VCR for a while by 1989? Like, or were they just trying to update their VCR? Because VCRs, like, they first started popping up in the late 70s. So surely by 1989, I felt like if you didn't have a VCR, what the fuck are you doing?
I wonder. I feel like they didn't have a VCR. If we're looking at a Black family and maybe around that time, movies themselves, like VHS tapes, were pretty expensive. So if you couldn't get a VCR or afford the VHS tape, I wouldn't expect a family to have it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have kept on saying about how expensive VCRs were. I do remember, like, certainly when they first came out, like the VCR, the computer, like good luck getting that. I mean, you have to be in the top 1% to get a computer or a VCR when it first came out. But I don't know. I guess I just kind of assumed that with the VCR, like by then being like 10 years old in 1989, like that it would have been the VCR that we kind of know when we were growing up in the 90s, where it slowly started to become like a $20, maybe $30 or $40 purchase.
Possibly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to put my finger on it. And I just remember early memories of being a child, like 91, 92. Getting a VHS tape was like spending half your life savings. So I just know that it had to be expensive back then.
Mama Winslow, and she's clearly hurt, we see that, tells Laura that this quilt has been in the family for 200 years. The patches make up the family history, and it's the only record the family ancestry has. And I was taken aback by looking at Rosetta because it looks like she's almost coming to tears. I was like, shit, Laura really fucked up.
She did. Oh my God, Mama Winslow played that so well. And I immediately felt myself get emotional. Like, damn, you done sold the quilt before slavery ended. Like, that was hard.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting Rosetta to give me what she gave me. I just thought it was just going to be a simple, light sitcom-y, like, oh, you sold my quilt? All right, fine. I guess I'll be mad. But no, she was just visibly affected. And we get a lot of that later on as the episode goes by. A lot of people tearing up and being visibly affected. It is a very heavy episode by comparison to all the other episodes we've seen so far. So Mama Winslow, in very obvious and painful to see emotion, tells Laura that that quilt is priceless. And then she gets up and heads toward the living room and says, excuse me, to the family. As some in the audience, they audibly awe and sympathy for her. And then we have slow emotional music to meet the moment playing as the remaining adults in the room go from looking sad at the sight of Mama Winslow to then looking at Laura like, look what you did. Basically like what Urkel would say, except very emotional. Look what you did.
Yes, look what you did. Or we could have gotten a way to go, Laura. I wish Eddie would have nailed that.
Can we have a shirt like that? I mean, I feel like we have so many Mama Winslow ideas. Like, can we have another shirt where it's like Mama Winslow and Laura, and she looks at her, way to go, Laura.
That would be amazing.
Camera zooms into Laura as her facial expression clearly indicates, oh shit, I really did fuck up. And then we have that music build to crescendo as the scene ends. So what were you thinking? I mean, because this is like, I think our first tense scene. Where were the emotions going through you at that moment as you saw that moment?
It was hard to watch. It was so hard to watch. I felt anxiety for Laura having to say, hey, I sold this quilt, and she not understanding the impact of what this quilt was. And then when Mama Winslow reacted to, oh, wait, you sold my quilt, it was played so well. It felt like a really natural response to the situation, because at first she didn't want to believe that Laura would really take this quilt and sell it after she told her not to. It's giving me Little Mermaid vibes. And I just feel like it was so deep to watch that it struck a chord with me. I feel like it was that moment where you disappointed somebody more than them being upset at you. And it just kind of resonated with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if a parent's upset at you. It's like, oh, whatever, parent upset at me. That's just life as a child. But if a parent calmly says they're disappointed and they show the emotions especially, oh, yeah, the guilt trip that you have as a kid, there's nothing like it.
There isn't. What did you think of the scene, John?
I was struck by how emotional it was. I was struck because we had never seen a moment like this. And I know that as Family Matters goes on over the course of 9 seasons, we're going to get more serious sort of TV movie of the week kind of moments. But I think because of the fact that this is the first one, it just kind of was like, whoa, like this really meant something to Mama Winslow. We're not going to play around with this. Like this really has meaning. So this made me more curious as to how uncomfortable this episode might make me further. And it did. All right, we go to scene 4, a crispy, clear day shot of the Winslow household. That was a beautiful day shot, by the way. Did you see that, the exterior day shot? I was like, damn.
It was picturesque. Like, I would love to live in that town.
Upbeat music, thankfully, giving us time to breathe from that tense last scene. Cut to kitchen, where we see Mama Winslow depressingly entering from the back porch door. But how about that bright blue and white dotted church dress with the dark blue sweater over it? Man, she knows how to dress her age.
She does. She just came from Bible study.
That is a total Bible study outfit. Oh, my God. I love that. I'm going to praise Jesus on Monday and then go to Vegas and fuck some man whores on Tuesday with Barbara Bush.
Next slumber party.
At her next slumber party with Barbara Bush and Lola Falana. Who knows?
Mama Winslow would have a blast. I could see her in Vegas.
Yeah, and they would show Barbara Bush how white privilege is not going to be tolerated in that room.
Exactly. She's like, you will not let this happen in this room. Get them out of here.
All right. As the camera pans to the left to follow a depressed walking Mama Winslow, we see Carl sitting by the countertop with his police uniform on and baby Richie on his lap, and Rachel sitting by the table with her chunky orange turtleneck sweater, polishing her saxophone. Carl awkwardly asks his mom how she's doing, and she turns around to tell Carl that she's come through worse things in her life. And then Mama Winslow sighs depressingly, which lets you know that she is clearly still down about the quilt. And I found that moment funny. The audience did too, because this is Black mom passive-aggressive guilt at its finest, what Mama Winslow is doing.
It really is. Mama Winslow is laying on where, like, I'm going to let you know that this is bothering me, but I'm going to say it's not bothering me so you know it's bothering me.
Oh, God. Why can't you just say you're bothered still? That's okay. Come on. Stop playing this game with me, Black Mom. All right. As Mama Winslow exits through the swinging door, a classily black-dressed Harriet says that Mama seems to be doing a lot better than she was yesterday. Carl shakes his head sadly and says that Quilt meant a lot to his mama, and then asks Harriet how Laura is doing. Harriet says Laura is out putting flyers all over the neighborhood because she's got it in her mind that she's going to find that quilt. Probably, I mean, maybe Laura could have gotten that white lady's contact info before the white lady ran off with the quilt. Again, this is why a child should not be selling something to an adult. They don't know these things.
Exactly. There's no way she would have known these things. On top of that, back then, I mean, there's the white pages it was that had everybody listed, but you would only know this woman's name. So how could you even contact her?
Oh, let me see. White lady, white lady, white lady. Oh, okay. There's like 23 fucking billion searches. This is going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Like, we got to find this one woman who took the slave quilt. How are we going to find her?
Exactly. There many white women that fit that description. Rachel clearly is not reading the room and says that everyone needs to cheer up around here, and suggests that some music from her god-awful saxophone would do the trick. But as Rachel blows into the sax, thankfully there's no sound that comes out. What happened?
There's no reed. If you don't have a reed, you can't make sound.
There you go. Yeah, Rachel looks at the sax suspiciously for a moment, asks Carl and Harriet, like you said, Andrew, who took her reed. Carl claims he does not know and asks baby Richie if he knows, but Rachel isn't having it and takes Richie from Carl and insists that she's got a whole box of reeds upstairs. But as Rachel exits, there you go, Harriet, once again, with the perfect follow-up, pats the pocket on her apron and says, oh, no, she doesn't.
Mm-hmm. She ate that line up. That is my favorite gay writer, giving her a good little quip there.
If we don't interview this gay writer before the end of this podcast, I will be crying like Mama Winslow almost did.
Oh, John, okay, we got to get you on here, gay guy. We need you.
Okay, so generic thing, white lady and gay guy. Those are our two goals. We're going to interview white lady and gay guy from episode 11 of season 1 of Family Matters. Got it. Check mark. So thankfully, Harriet spared us from more saxophone misery. Carl laughs and tells Harriet he owes her big. And in comes a depressed Laura entering from the back porch door with a flyer in hand. You know what? This kind of gave me deja vu from when she was depressed about getting a B+ on her report card from the Straight A's episode.
Yes, I thought of that. Her acting was very similar to this.
The writers were like, okay, Laura, the only way you're going to be depressed again is if you enter through the back front porch door, and then you do the same fucking thing that Mama Winslow does. Like, I'm not going to tell you what's bothering me. I'm just going to let you find out and ask me.
Yes, when we could have eliminated this altogether by you just answering and opening your mouth.
But also, as Laura is walking in depressed with this flyer in her hand, what in the Catholic schoolgirl heck is she wearing? I did not like what the fuck she was wearing. So it's like a pink turtleneck and pink button sweater and black skirt with, ironically, shoes that you would see Urkel wear later on. I mean, did this outfit strike out to you too, or was it just nothing?
It was ugly. It was ugly. Like, the fashion choices in this episode, nobody was dressed nicely.
And again, I contrast this Laura in early episodes with later seasons Laura as she grows up into a teenager, adult, dresses a lot better. I mean, yeah, okay, I guess you're a kid, you're trying to figure yourself out, but man, this is different. Like, because middle schoolers, I think, would try to be up on it and dress more hip-hoppity, but Laura was just like, nope, I'm just going to dress like a proper schoolgirl who gets a lot of good grades and also bullies my siblings on the down low.
That sounds just like the perfect straight A student.
Harriet says hi to Laura and asks if she has had any luck tracking down that quilt. Laura says no. She's put up flyers, went to every store, knocked on doors, and came up with nothing. Harriet tries to comfort Laura and says she's doing everything she can. And for some reason at this moment, I was just thinking of what gaslighting Rachel would say if she were there. Like, well, you should have listened to your grandma.
I feel like Rachel was waiting for an I told you so, and we just never got it in this moment.
Yeah, gaslighting and then the screeching saxophone as she walks away.
Oh, that would have been so good.
But thankfully, Harriet has those reeds in her pocket. Let's just keep them there.
Yes, no more reeds for Rachel.
Sorry, Laura thinks she let the family down. Carl holds Laura's hand comfortingly and says, sweetheart, you shouldn't have sold the quilt, that's for sure. but this is a mistake you'll have to live with and learn from. I thought, bravo, Carl. That's great parenting. Because honestly, he could have been that silver lining parent that's like, oh, don't worry, we'll find the quilt. Everything will be okay. Don't be sad. But no, he's giving Laura the reality that certain actions have consequences. She was clearly told not to sell the quilt. And now the consequence is seeing how badly it affected Mother Winslow and how difficult it is to get that quilt back.
Yeah, she's got to understand that you made a mistake and there's only one thing you can do. You just got to deal with it.
If only the end of the episode followed through with that lesson.
Oh, if only.
Laura says that poor grandma has to live with it too and claims that Mama Winslow told her not to feel bad, but Laura knows she really hurt her. Laura says she'll find that quilt if it takes her the rest of her life. Carl gives Laura further reality that based on his experience as a cop, he knows that if you don't find a good lead within 24 hours, chances are you're not going to solve the case, which actually confused me. Now, since you were a 911 operator, maybe you know this. Is it really true? Like that quick of a turnaround is required to find a good lead, or can you give a little bit more time?
I mean, you can give a little bit more time, but typically the first 24 hours is when you're going to find the most of anything you can find. I think for a missing person, they estimated about 72 hours. Mm. So you've got a very small window to actually find evidence of or traces of anything that happened from an incident.
That sounds like a really pressuring time crunch to me.
Yeah, definitely is a time crunch where it's like, how are we going to figure this out? What's going to happen? And once the leads go cold, what do you do?
Enter Eddie from the swinging door with his camera, and he's excitingly bracing Carl, Harriet, and Laura for the pictures he took at the garage sale. And right away, I'm thinking we may get a good lead for Laura here. Eddie thinks he has a real feel for photography as the family looks through his photos. Carl looks amusingly confused, asking what's in this photo he's looking at because it's all black. Eddie says he forgot to take off the lens cap, but they get better. Oh, adorably dumb Eddie. Love him.
I love it. Eddie is setting us up for a joke for him here.
Which identifies who you are in this episode, so I cannot wait to get to that. Harriet also is looking confused at one of the photos and asks what this one is. Eddie says that's his feet. And somehow I'm imagining that Darius has the ugliest feet ever. I don't want to get into a description of why, but something about Darius McCrary gives me ugly feet energy.
I feel like he has like basketball player feet where they've been pretty beat up just from what they do, and they're probably not pretty feet.
Yeah, if you've seen Shaq's feet, that's awful. Yeah, you have seen Shaquille O'Neal's feet, right?
Oh, I have seen them, and it was nightmarish.
Eddie is going to explain the photo away by saying that he was aiming for a cute girl at the garage sale, but he sneezed, which must have been a very powerful sneeze if somehow he got a picture of his feet. I just felt like that was a little bit of a stretch.
Hugely. I mean, unless he doubled over and sneezed, but again, it must have been a very powerful sneeze.
Carl makes me chuckle when he tells Eddie these photos are getting worse, but Eddie insists the family look at this next photo because it's his favorite. It's a picture of a gorgeous girl leaving the garage sale with nothing. There you go, Andrew. With nothing. And Eddie simply calls the photo Girl with Nothing. And I literally said, I wrote down, okay, I'm going to take that photo based on the title and with the pretentious, elegant posture that Eddie has when he says it. It was just perfect. I loved it.
It was. It gave me like a girl with the pearl earring. Like, oh my gosh, what is this painting of? Just some girl with an earring on? He's got the girl with nothing.
That should be like some kind of Bob Dylan song, some kind of folk singer song, you know?
Oh, the girl with nothing with a little banjo?
Yeah, I don't know. Something about the girl with nothing had a heart of something and she went to California to find it.
I would listen.
My folk album coming out March 25th. Just letting you know, Andrew.
Okay, I will be first in line to get it, and I'll ask you to sign my banjo.
Carl gives his son a what kind of boy have I raised look. Laura looks through the photos and says with disgust that little Richie could do a better job. She tells her dad to look at this photo because it's just a shot of their mailbox. Eddie explains that he was aiming for some lady to get into her car, but the mailbox just got in his way. All right, Eddie. Laura looks at a photo in surprise and comes to a realization that I saw coming. Wait a minute, says Laura. That's her. Carl asks who, and Laura confirms that this lady in the photo is the one who bought Mama Winslow's quilt. Carl takes the photo from Laura and looks at it with slow, glowing satisfaction and tells his daughter that this is great because now he can take it to the police lab and have them blow it up and have them read the license plate so they can find out who owns the car. Andrew, I didn't know what blowing up meant. Did you know what it meant to blow up a photo?
Yes, to just make it bigger, enhanced, or magnify an image in it.
Google told me if a photographic image is blown up, a large copy is made of it. The image is blown up on a large screen. I thought it was when they were doing all the oily stuff under the red light in the photo lab. Like, you know, that creepy nerd that's like, oh, I'm going to oil this photo up of this beautiful girl that I saw when I was taking a picture from the bushes.
I'm laughing because I've done that developing a photo, but I don't want it to look that creepy.
Wait. You were taking a creepy picture of a girl from the bushes? Wait, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I didn't take a picture of a girl from the bushes. It would have been a boy, but I was developing photos before, and you have to do that in the red light room and all that.
Yeah, with all the oils, you know, all the oils. Laura, in an odd and rare display of affection to Eddie, says delightfully that she could kiss him. Eddie understandably gives Laura a look that's like, whoa, that's a weird thing I did not expect you to say. And also, ew. And then Laura says, there, I think it passed, as if to imply that she's given Eddie the minimum amount of sibling affection required for the day. But then Laura surprises me. She actually says, oh, what the heck, and physically brings Eddie in for a kiss on the cheek. Carl understandably says he's got to get a photo of this because when the fuck is Laura ever a great sibling?
Never. This is a weird line, though. I've never had the urge to kiss a sibling.
And Eddie tells his dad, no, as the camera flashes. And then, you know, too late, Eddie, goofy smiled Carl Winslow, got his much needed sibling love moment on camera. Upbeat music plays to fade us out of this scene. All right. So then we go to scene 5, the problematic scene, in my opinion.
The biggest problematic scene.
So we have an exterior shot of the kind of building that I feel like you'd find in Paris or Italy. Like, did you notice that it just had that like very bleak, beige, old-timey Roman structure to it?
It did. It looked like a really weird church or like a temple or something where I was like, where is this building?
Yeah, which I guess is appropriate for an art museum because I feel like we can associate art a lot with like Italian culture, Roman culture, Paris culture, that kind of thing. So we go into the interior and we find out, yes, it's an art museum. Laura pulls Carl by the arm to come inside. Carl and Laura look around at the art. And of course, I noticed this random wooden horse in front of them that could probably be in a carousel. Why this wooden horse is there, I don't know.
I saw it. You know what immediately gave me Trojan vibes? I was like, what? Are we in Troy? Like, where did this horse come from?
Going back to the condom quilt. I love that. Condom quilt. Trojan condoms. I saw what you did there, Andrew.
I had to make it full circle.
Laura finds the quilt spread out on a wall and points it out for her dad. Laura and Carl walk over to the quilt. Carl checks the price tag on it and is blown away that it is going for the white privilege markup of $3,000. How did we go from $300 to $3,000, white privilege lady?
She knew what she was doing. This is colonization at its finest.
Can it also be defined as cultural appropriation?
100%, because she's selling a cultural item for money and charging more than she paid for it.
Laura is not fazed, though, and tells her dad to just grab this quilt, and get out of here. Carl tells Laura to calm down, and then we enter our perfectly thin blonde white lady who has not been named yet, even though this episode is almost over. And she has what I feel to be a contrastingly bland outfit. Like, it's like, oh, white lady, perfectly thin, but the outfit, I just felt like, ugh.
Very ugly. It was ugly. It was like eating mashed potatoes that are not seasoned. It was ugly.
White people mashed potatoes. That's basically what it is.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The white lady asking Laura and Carl somewhat suspiciously if she can help them. White lady then recognizes Laura and extends another hello. Laura tells white lady that his dad wants to talk to her and reminds her that he's a cop. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Laura. Like, this lady legally purchased this quilt from you. I don't think the cop card won't work too much. And yes, we could make the argument again that, you know, you as a minor shouldn't have conducted a garage sale alone, but nonetheless, it was a legal purchase.
It was. Everything about the purchase itself was legal. And even the fact that it's legal doesn't make it okay in my book. Just because something is legal, it does not make it ethical. And you shouldn't be buying something like this from a child after that child has specifically said to you, I am not supposed to sell this.
Laura did say, I think like 2 or 3 times that the quilt was not for sale, but the lady kept pushing. And here she is showing it off at a museum for a lot of fucking money, you know? Like, hey, look at me. I'm, you know, showcasing Black culture at its finest.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. This is perfect lead into why I have a big to do with this actual scene and what's happening right now. So on January 25th, it was reported by Reuters and the Associated Press that two museums in London, one being the British Museum and the other, I think it's Albert and Victoria, the Victoria and Albert Museum, they have artifacts that came from Ghana, from Black cultural establishments, and they were stolen. The museums have admitted that these items were stolen, and now they're going to loan them back to the people of Ghana to keep in their museum. So they are literally taking something that was taken from Black people that they have stolen, that they have admitted that they are stolen, and they're now going to charge these same Black people money just to loan it back to them. And that's the vibe that I got from this moment in this scene. And that's what made me relate it to what's happening today.
Wow.
Craziness.
Hey, this may belong to you, but we're going to charge you as if it doesn't belong to you.
Mm-hmm. Knowing that you took it in some very unethical procedures.
That is white privilege for you. Oh boy. All righty. Didn't know that story. Thank you for sharing that. That was really something. Carl gives sort of a nervous chuckle to White Lady and tells her she'll have to forgive Laura because she's a little upset and wasn't supposed to sell the quilt. So Carl simply offers to refund White Lady so he and Laura can get the quilt back and forget this whole thing. White Lady says she's sorry, but a deal was made. Carl disbelievingly asks this lady if she's really selling this quilt for $3,000. White Lady says she's not an unreasonable person and offers to sell it to Carl and Laura for $2,800. And right away I'm thinking like, wow, lady, not too much of a discount.
None at all. No discount there. And then on top of that, she has the nerve to say it like it's a good thing.
Carl cannot believe the still high price tag and tells the lady he does not have $2,800. White Lady says that they have a terrific layaway plan. And goddamn, I was automatically thinking, like, when was the last time that I put something on layaway? When was the last time you put something on layaway? I feel like that's not something that people do anymore.
I don't think I've ever put anything on layaway as an adult. I know that as kids, like my parents would do layaway, but I don't think I've ever done it as an adult.
It's the equivalent of like doing the monthly payment process when you're trying to like pay off a loan or pay off some debt. Like that's basically what it is. I think once that became more popular, layaway was just like, oh, okay, I guess we don't become relevant anymore.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, we don't need it. Just take the item. Just make sure you keep paying for it or we'll come repossess it.
White Lady offers Carl and Laura a $100 monthly payment on the quilt and an invitation to a lecture series on the history of macrame, which reminded me of macaroni, but it's not macaroni. What, did you think it was macaroni or did you already know what macrame was?
I knew what macrame was because of a joke that I've heard in another show, but it does sound like macaroni.
Is there really a macrame joke that exists? Like that's weird. Like what was the context? Tell me.
So it was in this show called Shin-Chan. Anybody who's an anime watcher, if you've seen Shin-Chan, there's a character named Maso who they hint is gay but never say that he's gay. And so he makes costumes for his friends as Slavs. And he's upset that they don't get to wear them because he spent the entire day doing macrame on them. And it is the funniest joke in context of that show. If you ever watch it, please laugh and share it with me.
So the definition of macrame that I got online, it's a form of textile produced using knotting rather than weaving or knitting techniques. Does that match up with what we're talking about here?
Yes, perfectly.
So no thanks, because that sounds like a very boring history lesson. Just my opinion.
It doesn't look like a fun thing. And I've seen some macrame stuff done. I'm just like, that just doesn't seem fun to do.
Laura asks her dad if she can say something. Once Carl agrees, Laura explains to White Lady in a slightly high-pitched, woe is me, I'm a poor child voice that this quilt is not just any quilt. It covers her family's entire history. White Lady correctly gives Laura the simple fact that she decided to sell it to her. And then, wow, Laura claims with, I think we're getting some tears glistening from her eyes. Again, this is another surprise from Mama Winslow, but it was different. Mama Winslow, I was touched in buying that. Laura, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. So Laura claims that she didn't know what the quilt was and her grandmother told her not to sell it, but she didn't listen. And Jesus Christ, I'm hearing a violin playing in the background. Did you? Like, as this moment was building into a sappy message moment. And were you sympathizing with Laura? Were you getting moved as she was saying this speech? Because to me, I was still on my stance. I was like, no, actions have consequences. I'm sorry. You can't emotionally manipulate your way into this.
I felt bad for Laura because I hate seeing Black children crying. So I felt bad in that situation because I'm like, damn, I don't want to see this girl crying. I didn't feel bad in the concept of trying to use emotion to sway this woman, because there were far other and much better tactics to get your stuff back legally the way this woman probably would have done it had they taken something from her.
What could have Laura done instead?
I'd be like, hey, Dad, you need to step in and handle this because she's not listening to me. And you need to explain to her what the law is. The fact that you coerced a child into giving you an item that they weren't supposed to give you, that there was not theirs to sell. It didn't even belong to me. Carl, as a cop, you should know that this is, would we call that larceny? Technically, yes, because she didn't own it and this woman took it. Like, you're a cop. Let's get legal on her. I'm not about to sit here and cry. No, let's get legal about it.
But unfortunately, Carl does not do that. He just kind of, stands back and lets the emotional manipulation happen. So yeah, Carl looks at Laura seemingly a little taken aback by how this is emotionally affecting her. And boy, it's really affecting her. All of a sudden, with growing violin music, Laura puts on a performance with tears in her eyes, emotionally explaining that selling the quilt was a mistake that she will regret for the rest of her life. White Lady gives Laura a sympathetic sorry that's still a no and turns around for a moment, but the weird melodrama still continues. Laura cries out to the lady that she doesn't understand because Laura really hurt her whole family. As this piano and violin background music grows, Laura pleads with tears to, now we know, Miss Nash. That's her name, the White Lady, Miss Nash.
Miss Nash. It's so random that they just all of a sudden say her name and you're like, wait, how do we know her name? But we know her name because Carl illegally used police systems to find her information.
And also, I'm imagining the writers in the background being like, you know what? I don't know. Can we call her the White Lady throughout this show? I don't think we can. We might have to give her a name.
Miss Nash. I just want to know where they came up with that at.
That sounds like a bland white school teacher name, to be honest with you.
It does, but all I'm thinking of is Niecy Nash, and I love Niecy Nash.
Oh, God. When she won that Emmy for Jeffrey Dahmer, her role in that miniseries, well-deserved. Loved it.
Love her. I love you, Niecy Nash. I will thank you for everything that happens good in my life.
Miss Nash dramatically sits down somewhere near Laura to think about this. Again, weird soap opera vibes throughout this. This just felt really misplaced. I'm cringing and hating Laura more as she goes on with this sob speech. She tells Miss Nash to think about when she was a kid and asks if she ever did something she wished she hadn't. Miss Nash acknowledges that everybody has. And tearful Laura tells Miss Nash to imagine how she would feel if she sold something meaningful from her family that was priceless. And it was the only record of all your relatives. And I felt like there was somewhere in that moment where Laura was like reading a script that Mama Winslow wrote, because Mama Winslow kind of said the same thing, a little like that quilt was a record of our family and it's the only record that our family has. Like, I think Laura just kind of like processed that in her head and just used that as a script to get this White Lady to get on her side.
I feel like she used that. Now, the only point where I am on Laura's side here, aside from the fact that I just don't believe it was ethical to buy the quilt in the first place, is her having to explain that this is the only record of our history. This woman who comes from a background, which I am assuming because you are white, you know your family history, you have a detailed track of your family history, and you don't have to go to the lengths that somebody who was Black would in America to figure out, well, where did our oldest ancestors come from, especially predating the Civil War. It's like, okay, this I can understand bringing up in the context of the conversation. That would have been the first thing I started with, and not saying it crying. I would have been like, look, this is our historical record. I sold this to you by mistake. What do we have to do? Because either I'm going to call the cops, rip it down myself, or you're just going to give it to me and there will be no violence that happens here today.
You know, Laura feels the way she feels, like that's valid. But to your point, I think that if she took a breath before she came in and just plainly said, and I know we're probably expecting too much from a child here. Maybe this is something that Carl should have been doing. But either her or Carl, if they had the calming, straightforward maturity to say, this is what's wrong about what just happened, and this is how we should correct it, I think it would have made a difference. I think the fact that Laura had to resort to the sitcom sappy message, crying like, oh my God, please, like, that's what took me out of it. But what you're saying, I wish that would have happened. I would have been on Laura's side so much if she just straightforward just said, this is why this is wrong. Please, let's correct it.
Yes, and we know Laura has the intelligence to express her opinion that way. We have seen her do it for 10 plus episodes before this. So it's not like we needed that crying moment of her hysterically crying and Carl doing absolutely nothing but just watching this happen.
But can you argue that it can be intelligent for someone to know that, oh, I can manipulate this person if I put on this performance and they'll go in my way. Can that arguably also be considered intelligent, or is that just like, oh, no, you're just being like stupid?
I can agree that that would be seen as intelligent because Laura knew how to play her cards right. My only problem with that in this situation is playing your cards right that way. You've got to really do it and not provide all this context and information that you could have related to this woman equally without crying. Now, crying is not a bad thing. She's showing her emotion. She's showing her emotion. We get that there's a reason that she's sad. She's been upset about this for days. But I feel like in the context of the show, it just seems so overdone where I just was like, okay, I don't need her to cry right now. I don't need her to cry right now because she's technically not in the wrong by saying, hey, I wasn't supposed to do this. And this other lady was really in the wrong of like, hey, you didn't even listen to a child. Like, what is happening here?
As Laura confirms that is what Mama Winslow's quilt means to the Winslow family. We got a shot of Carl looking very affected by his daughter's emotional manipulation. And she continues on saying that this quilt is the only way she'll ever know who she is or where she comes from. Carl comes over to give Laura a comforting hug for this performance and tells her it's all right, as we see a shot of, I guess, a visibly affected Miss Nash thinking about what she's going to do with this quilt. And then we go from sappy piano and violin music to something a little more upbeat to fade us into the next scene. Did you like the way they ended that scene, even though overall we had problems with this scene? Or did you wish that Miss Nash came to a decision in that moment?
I wish that Miss Nash came to a decision in that moment. I wish that there was some kind of like, hey, here's the resolution. You take the money back. We take the quilt back. Something. Because there wasn't that definitive answer of how they get the quilt. Then I was like, did Carl break down and just pay this woman what she was asking?
Can it be argued that it's another form of white privilege that we don't see Miss Nash openly say, okay, I was wrong, here's her quilt back? The fact that it's like quiet behind the scenes, is that sort of reflective of maybe a lot of white people not very obviously taking responsibility for their unfortunate role in something like this? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Like, I hate to be political, but the only thing I can grasp from right now in my head are things that are happening that we've seen happen in the media. We've got like people saying that slavery had benefits to it because they don't want to admit that slavery was terrible in every aspect. Or we've got like police departments when something happens and let's say it's a white cop doing to somebody who is of color, a black person, assault, murder, police brutality. They'll never admit that they were wrong. They'll just say, oh, okay, we understand. As opposed to, no, I'm sorry, I should not have done this. So that's kind of the information that is given here in this context of us not seeing her actually provide an apology or give a resolution to the problem. So I think that that is a form of privilege where you don't have to admit you were wrong.
Yeah, you just kind of quietly behind the scenes like, all right, fine, here's your quilt back. You know, it's like, no. I think a formal like, hey, I was wrong and this is why I was wrong, that could have been more effective. But alas, we go to scene 6, exterior night shot of Winslow house, cut to living room where Rachel is giving us quite the stellar improvisational jazz performance on her saxophone. But you can clearly tell it just sounds like some kind of stock recording that someone is playing off stage.
It does. And I love that Rachel did not move a single finger the entire time she was supposedly playing. I was looking at her hands and I'm like, is she going to at least move one finger somewhere? Did not move a finger at all. Interesting
you mentioned that because I just was noticing her entire overall body, just the way she was physically, animatingly just getting into it. But of course, because you're knowledgeable about this band process, you were a saxophone player. Of course, you would know like, oh, wait a minute, her fingers aren't moving. She's not actually playing this. So I thought initially that like, oh, like Rachel is genuinely playing, but it clearly sounds like she's not playing. Like the show is making it seem like she's actually like suddenly a big player. But I think by you noticing that detail that her fingers aren't moving, it leads to the joke that's about to come in just a moment. So we get Harriet and Mama Winslow entering the living room, and they're clearly very stunned by what they hear. And honestly, it's funny because it's just so outrageous. Rachel goes from screeching awful to suddenly sounding like John Coltrane up in this bitch. Harriet exclaims to Rachel that her playing is fantastic. Mama Winslow finds it unbelievable. Harriet is trying to get Rachel's attention again, and when it doesn't work, Harriet screams her name louder, which startles the heck out of Rachel, and then she stops, and now, it's revealed that she wasn't really playing the saxophone. She was just kind of saxophone lip syncing to this boombox recording that she kind of takes out of the radio when all is said and done. And Rachel just casually asks Harriet and Mama Winslow to repeat what they were trying to tell her earlier, as if her saxophone lip syncing is something normal. Mama Winslow says, never mind. Enter Laura and Carl from the living room front door, and Laura is hiding a gift-bagged thing behind her that must be this quilt. Carl tells his mama delightfully that Laura has something for her. Laura tells her grandmama that this is for her as she hands the bag to Mama Winslow. Mama Winslow looks in the bag and gives a stunned, "Oh my Lord!" She said the Lord's name in vain on national television.
She did, but she went to Bible study earlier that day. She had a free one in the chamber.
Okay. There you go. Is that the rule? Like if you go to Bible study once a week, you're allowed one, oh my Lord?
You are. You can say a Jesus Christ. Now, if you say Jesus H Christ, you got to make sure that you make it to Sunday service.
Okay. And stay for both services as well as the meal afterwards that will happen at, say, 4:00 after you've been there since 9:00 in the morning.
Yes, all of the fried chicken and greens you can eat.
Yeah, you better feed me if you're making me stay a whole day and not pay me as well.
You're paid by the Lord, okay?
I guess you're paid by the Lord and his grace. Rachel cannot believe it. Harriet thinks this is wonderful and calls out to Eddie and Judy upstairs to come down because the quilt is back. Mama Winslow asks Carl how on earth did he find this quilt? Wow, for once, Mama Winslow giving Carl some credit here, and Carl doesn't even deserve the credit.
Carl did absolutely nothing, but Mama Winslow, she wants to love her son, but she's ready to go to Frank's house at this point.
Exactly. And rent those towels.
She's ready. At least they won't sell my slavery quilt.
And beg for dinner. And Frank is going to be like, I'm sorry, woman. What do you think? I'm a bank? I'm not going to feed you. Meanwhile, he literally is a bank because he works in New York City selling carpets for a lot of money and also doing some weird gangster crime shit on the side.
Oh, yeah. He sells cinder blocks and carpets.
Quote, cinder blocks and carpets, quote. Carl says he did not do it. Laura did. Mama Winslow looks at Laura and says she's so relieved to have it back. As Eddie and Judy come down the stairs, Harriet speaks for the family and says they're all happy to have this quilt back. Carl tells his mama now is a good time to tell everybody the story of the quilt. Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm getting a forced Black history lesson when Carl said that. Mama, it's time to tell that story right now. Do we have 45 minutes?
I was expecting, let's break out into spiritual, Follow the Drinking Gourd is about to play in the background. We are going to talk about this quilt, y'all. Yeah.
And I think at this point, there's maybe 4 minutes left in the episode. Is this going to be a two-parter? What's going on?
I was watching it. And, I always keep my timer up so I can see the length of the episodes because I'm obsessed to see what's shorter, what's longer. And when I saw that we were at the 5-minute mark, I was like, how are they going to talk about this quilt? I remember this quilt when they mentioned it before, and it was old as shit. So are we about to have a 2-part episode? I swore we were.
It seemed like it because, Mama Winslow was like, okay, here we go. Part 1. And I'm like, there's 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Are you just going to rush through this? So... So we'll get to that moment eventually, I guess. And then Eddie, giving Laura a burn that I think she clearly deserved, telling Mama Winslow, tell the story before Laura sells it again.
Finally, Eddie got a good one in. That was a good one.
And, oh, God, again, just like the fucking last episode with the whatever episode 10 was, the false arrest, a strange, quiet fade out to suggest that a commercial break was just kind of placed in there. Why would a commercial break be placed in there when there's 2.2 seconds left? I don't know. But then scene 7, we get the quiet fade back into the living room with the family where Mama Winslow tells Carl that she was waiting for a special time as Laura sits right next to her on the center couch. And now Mama thinks this is the time to tell the quilt story in exactly 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Okay, here we go. Mama Winslow explains that this quilt was started by the kid's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, Amy Rose, 6 generations ago, even before the Civil War. Mama continues on and says, Amy wanted a record of the family in one place. It was to be passed down from generation to generation, each adding something special to it. Carl follows up on the story by saying that each cloth has a special meaning to it. Carl wants to confirm with Mama that this piece he's pointing to comes from a great aunt's wedding dress. Mama says that's right and says that this other piece is Amy Rose's dress that she wore to the church every Sunday morning. Laura asks what this other piece is, and Mama Winslow says that's a piece of her daddy's uniform that he wore in France in World War I. Rachel is amazed by this history and asks Mother Winslow where her special patch is. Mama Winslow tells Rachel she doesn't have one yet because the tradition is that the eldest daughter sews on the patch after you've passed on. Harriet reminds Mama Winslow that she doesn't have any daughters. Mama confirms the truth in that, but she would be so proud. I thought she was going to pass it on to Laura. I didn't know she was going to pass it on to Harriet.
I thought the exact same thing. I thought she was going to be like, oh, I'm going to have Laura do it. But then when she passes it to Harriet, I was like, oh, mind blown.
Emotional keyboard music plays as we see Harriet looking touched by that and thanking Mother Winslow. And I loved the way Jo Marie said that line. Like, I felt it. I don't know if you felt it as well.
Oh, I did. This was an emotional scene. I cried rewatching this, like a tear streamed down my face. I was like, this is so good. And both of them, Mama Winslow, Harriet, the way they just interact in the scene, it just felt so genuine.
Yeah, Jo Marie and Rosetta, you can tell that they've had quite a bit of acting training because they really sold what could otherwise be conceived as a simple dramatic moment. Mama Winslow says she knows the perfect place to keep this quilt. Harriet asks, where's that? Mama Winslow says, Laura's room, and asks Laura what she thinks. Laura cannot believe Mama Winslow would trust her with this quilt. Mama confirms the trust is now more than ever. Laura promises to never let it out of her sight until the day she gives it to her daughter. And of course, the audience gives a little awe. And right away, I'm thinking that that daughter could be named Laura Lee Urkel.
Oh, Laura Lee Urkel. I would love that.
I don't know. I mean, would Laura give her daughter another name? Probably Sherry Urkel. I don't know.
Possibly. I could see like a Laura Lee Urkel or maybe like a Shaniqua Urkel, like something like that I could see.
That does not make sense. Shaniqua, ghetto, and then Urkel, did I do that? That's like a very weird, like nerdy ghetto balance. That could also be interesting. I might want to actually see how that works.
Look, if we could get a Family Matters remake, Shaniqua Urkel would be the main character.
Mm-hmm. And then she just keeps on saying, mm-hmm. Because Mama Winslow is dead and she needs a descendant to carry on the mm-hmm.
She does. We'll get a look what you did and a way to go.
Mama Winslow, emotional. Oh, yeah. And man, even though they kind of like cut off this episode really randomly with the way they left it off emotionally, God, I mean, Mama Winslow was just touching me with the way she emotionally told Laura that she loves her. Oh, I love you so much. And then Laura says she loves her too. And then they embrace for a hug. I mean, I was touched by that.
I was touched by this. This was a touching moment. This whole scene was like what I needed after that very dramatic scene before with the white woman and Laura and crying and everything. This kind of wrapped it up a little bit better for me.
Yeah, my only note is that they could have let the quilt story and the build up to the emotions between Harriet, Mama Winslow, Laura. Like, I think there should have been a little bit more breathing room. I think the fact that we somehow compressed that all into 2 minutes and 47 seconds, that was a little strange.
Yeah, it was a little stretched. It cheated us out of like a really good moment. I mean, because we had that huge emotional moment with Laura crying and everything. Before that, we had all this focus on the yard sale that just never really happened. And we saved this little 2-minute chunk for this very big emotional scene that could have been used for so much character development. Like, this scene should have been 10 minutes long.
We have that emotional music volume builds as we see the family visibly affected by the hug between Laura and Mama Winslow. Then we get a wide shot of everyone as a weird audience applause cuts in. Like, that was odd. Like, I just feel like, and this is going back to the conversation with Jacques Bolton, where, edits in post-production that we don't get to hear or see in the final cut. I feel like maybe that studio audience generally was like, "Aw," like that there was maybe some visible or just some audible way of showing that they were affected, either through quiet or through like maybe like someone sniffing because they just teared up. But no, like just a stock audience applause, and then the credits come up. It was like, nah, that's not the response that I was expecting.
It was very abrupt. I did not like that.
So closing thoughts. I mean, I think for me personally, I am surprised in a good way that we were able to get into a deep racial conversation based on the dynamic between Miss Nash and what Laura did, by selling Grandma Winslow's quilt. So that's probably the key thing that I would take away is that we led into a deeper conversation that I probably didn't see so much of when I was recapping the episode. What are your closing thoughts?
I mean, I can agree too. Watching it, I had my thoughts, I had my things, but I didn't know we would get into such a depth conversation about it, which I enjoy. Because I enjoy that this episode, while it's definitely not my favorite, and it was a harder one for me to watch, it sparks so much thought and conversation that I don't even know the writers realized that they were going to spark. Because, so I watched, if anybody wants to watch it, The Dark Side of Comedy, the Family Matters episode. I recently watched that about a week ago. And at this episode, they were actually planning on canceling the show. The show was not doing as well as they thought it was going to do, and they were ready to cancel it. And then this episode premiered, and I don't know if other people had the same thought-provoking conversations or thinking that we did. I mean, someone out there had to have. I don't feel like it would be just an individualized emotion. But for a show that was about to get canceled at this point, I thought this was a really poignant episode with some good points that we could have expanded on to make it better. I would say it was enjoyable as far as a rewatch. I now have gotten over my anxiety of seeing those icky emotional moments and just looking at it for what it was a pretty good episode.
So are you saying, going back to the whole Family Matters was almost going to be canceled, was the turning point this episode? Because it's very fitting.
The turning point is the next episode. Yeah, the turning point is the next episode. They were going to cancel the show after this episode. And
it's interesting that you say that, because while a casual viewer and television network executives at the time are like, oh God, like there's not much to this show. It's just like, who's this family? They're not interesting. Maybe there's like comforting, funny, heartwarming moments here and there, but they just don't pop. Like this show doesn't pop. But meanwhile, like us looking at it 35 years later, not having the Steve Urkelness of it yet, it's this episode where I'm starting to think like, like this show is starting to gel. Like I'm knowing these characters more and more. As we said earlier, everybody seems to have gotten their moment. Judy got a moment. Lori got a moment. Eddie got a moment. Carl and Harriet, Mama Winslow, Rachel, everybody got to play in this episode. Oh my God. The drama had some heavy, deep, thought-provoking moments to it. I think an argument could be made that episode 11 is where Family Matters could have found a strong voice. So it's kind of ironic that this family seems to have a strong identity that is likable and I would like to see more and more of. But come episode 12, nope, we're going to pivot.
Yep, we're going to pivot. This was one of those moments where we've had weird little hijinks. We've had little comedic moments leading up, but we had never really had a serious episode. And we finally got some seriousness out of this family. And it's about to veer off the train tracks, run into a bridge, get slammed into by a helicopter, lifted off the ground, hit with a laser, and then shot with a missile. Like, this show is about to change.
It really is. First 10 episodes, I felt heartwarming, sometimes almost cheesy, corny, family-friendly comedy. This episode, how is it that the episode before Steve Urkel's debut is where I'm saying, wow, this show has some depth. Like, it's not just like, oh, we're just going to kind of be the Black Full House. Like, we're going to show that there are layers to this family. And then forget about that. Episode 12. I mean, I think from episode 12, it's a different show. So first off, I mean, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. The Delicious Recap Family Matters. Questions, comments, concerns, feedback can go to thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. You can follow us Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube at Family Matters Rewatch Pod. Andrew, can you remind people how they can follow you again on social?
You can follow me at Ajay Vandertunt on Instagram and TikTok. I do have a Facebook page, but I do not use it. I don't check it. I don't post anything on it because I don't know how to delete it. So don't try to follow me on Facebook, but Instagram and TikTok at AJ Vandertunt. If you just type in Vandertunt, I will come up on both platforms.
And the funny thing is that I still tag you on the Facebook post, even though I know that you don't use the Facebook, because I just have this amusing imagery in my mind that oh, so many of our fans are going to follow the wasteland that is Andrew Vandertunt's Facebook page, and he just won't respond back to them in any way.
If you follow me, if you send me a request on Facebook, I apologize. I won't see it. I don't even know the password to my Facebook page anymore. I haven't logged into that thing for 3 years now?
Obviously, you can always, do the password reset thing. But if it's not worth it to you, then let it be a wasteland and I'll just keep tagging away. Season 1, episode 12 is our next episode. Laura's First Date, otherwise known as the official debut of Steve Urkel. I cannot wait to look at a cold open with Urkel and say, it makes sense for him to be there.
Finally.
I think when I watched Urkel's episodes without seeing Family Matters in order, the first 10 or 11 episodes, I just simply appreciated the comedy of it. But again, getting to know the Winslow family as much as I have, getting to see the depth in this episode, I have mixed emotions about Urkel's introduction now. I have now this feeling of like, oh yeah, I mean, we get some great slapstick comedy, but at the same time, at the cost of what could have been more depth to this Winslow family.
The thing is, I look at the cover art, I guess what the DVD covers would be for this show. And you'll notice the Winslow family, they don't look like they fit in with Urkel at all. And they're way in the back. And now we just have Urkel on the front of this box art. And it just is so jarring. It's jarring. It's like fisting accident jarring, where it's like, what in the world happened to us here?
Wait a minute, like someone accidentally being fisted in a porno video without their consent? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not without their consent. Just it accidentally slips into there. And you're just like, oh, okay, this happened.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, look, even looking at the episodes on Hulu, because like I'm looking at what the show originally was conceived as. And in the meantime, like as sort of like the advertising photo thing, like when you kind of click through the episodes, it's like, oh, there's a big picture of nerdy faced Urkel. And then like the Winslow family is just like all the way. Sometimes they're not even showed. It's just like, hey, I'm Steve Urkel. It's my show.
They're either in the back and they've got on church clothes. They're all dressed like they're going to church. And then we just have randomly Urkel in the front in suspenders, a t-shirt and jeans. And it's like, what are we seeing?
As I promoted the podcast through photos and stuff like that, like it's the Winslow family, like sure, like Urkel is in the main podcast logo photo that we always keep showing. But I think we should make it a point that like the show would not be here without the Winslows. The Winslows are the foundation. They started this, and Urkel just happened to come along and just take over. But let's not forget, like the solid ground that keeps Urkel afloat.
Yes, Urkel wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for the Winslows.
Because think about it, like would you literally take 30 minutes of just Steve Urkel and his antics? I don't think so. You need to have that balance of normal, grounded people. And that's where the Winslows come in for the rest of the show.
Yes, we need that foundation. And I'm happy we got a base. I am very happy we had this first 11 episodes. I kind of feel like we're ending a season for some reason because I know Urkel is coming.
we're treating him like he's some kind of apocalyptic weather event or something like that. So I think slowly but surely over the course of season 1, we are going to see a different fucking show. And I'm very curious and very excited to see how we react as time goes by.
Yes, I'm excited to see it. This is going to be a fun one.
Here we go. All right, Andrew, please take us out.
I will, because I'm going to just drop a little bomb for us of let deliciousness ring, because I did that.